please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Welcome back. Well, it's stabilized for the day, and 25,410 on the Bank Nifty, 10,536 on the Nifty, and 34,280 on the Sensex. The mid-cap index today has taken a bigger beating, 1:3 advance decline. By the way, we have only spoken about PNB. Something seriously wrong with Repco Home Finance as well. I refuse to believe it's only because of numbers that the stock is down about 8% as we speak. That stock as well is going home at the lowest point. So. And on a day when other NBFCs actually did well, this was one stock which since morning was a bit weak and is now ending at a low point. Good time to get you the BTST calls. Ashwani Gujral and Mitesh Thakkar with us for that. Ashwani, you go first. A bit of stability in the market. Thoughts on index and stock calls?
See, the index, if again US markets close higher, again you start with a 80-point gap up, and then you have your breaking news, etc., and everything collapses. So it's tough to say whether you should take short positions home or long positions home. I wouldn't definitely take long positions home, but clearly the market will give you these bounce backs on and off to take fresh shorts. But overall, today's action proves that there is further downside. And if it helps, Nirav Modi has also defrauded Priyanka Chopra.
Yeah, okay. I think there are, as we said, Ashwani, there are many tangents to this story. Clearly, we haven't heard the last of it. Actually, speaking of that...
So Ashwani, what's your point? I mean, if Priyanka Chopra can be defrauded, then others can be defrauded as well?
Now it becomes a national issue.
Oh, yes, it definitely does now. International issue as well now. She's a Hollywood celebrity as well. Ashwani.
Yeah, this NPA is international.
Yes. Okay, your stock calls.
Yeah, Repco Home is a sell with a stop of 562, target of 540. UPL is a sell with a stop of 720, target of 690. And Prestige is a buy with a stop of 318, target of 336.
Okay, fair enough. Mitesh, are you taking any positions home on the indices? If yes, what are those positions and what about individual stocks?
Yeah, not on the index per se, but I think I would be okay buying Nifty puts, though we haven't initiated that. On the stock side, I have two sell calls. Repco is on my sell list as well, clearly breaking important support. So keep a stop at 571, look for targets of 525. And Dabur is a STBT, keep a stop at 344, look for targets of 332.
Okay, quite a bit of price damage on Repco. That was, of course, Ashwani's BTST call as well. Let's just pull out that stock once again. Prakash, anything you're hearing on this? Because I mean, I refuse to believe that this is because they reported slightly higher NPA.
Oh yes,
down
of
about
course.
8%.
The numbers don't warrant such a strong reaction and such a sustained negative reaction. So we have also been kind of trying to, put a finger on what's led to this. But the vertical rise and then this in the last let's say about 8 weeks is what kind of is mystifying. So we'll have to wait for more details to come through. But it seems like a lot of heavy-weighted selling that's happening on the counter from probably investors who have been holding it for quite well.
The indices, the Nifty Bank, the Nifty itself, and the mid-cap index, because at one point that index was down 1.5%. Now it's down 1%. So there seems to be some semblance of at least holding the lows. Let's just go back to the biggest story of the last 48 hours. Here's a word coming in from Minister of State for Finance, Shiv Pratap Shukla, on the PNB saga.
2011 से ये घोटाला हुआ है, 2011 की स्थिति में हुआ है और कहा यह गया कि मतलब एक डीजीएम था जो मुंबई के थे, लगभग 5-6 साल तक वहाँ थे, उनके आधार पर ये हो रहा था। होता ये था कि इस प्रकार के एलएयू जो है जारी करती है बैंक, जो बैंक विदेश में भी काम करती है, तो ऐसी स्थिति में वो जारी किया करते थे और जो ही वो टर्म पूरा होता था दूसरी कर दिया करते थे। तो इस प्रकार से दो आदमियों की मिली जुगली भगत में ये हुआ है और आज इसके संदर्भ में पीएनबी के चेयरमैन स्वयं प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस कर करके अपने पूरा स्पष्टीकरण का, इस बीच इन लोगों ने 5 FIRs जो है वो लिया है और दे करके सीबीआई को दिया है और इसकी पूरी जांच है।
Okay, decent recovery by the way for the market, and in particular for the bank nifty. I just want to see if it's led by, say, a stock like ICICI Bank, which was strong through the day, and then there was that, of course, 1 p.m. weakness which impacted all stocks. So from the low about 25,300 on the bank nifty, you now move to 25,441, and large part of that recovery is on account of ICICI Bank. I just saw in that intraday chart as well. Perhaps would be good to also pull out the other ones, say an HDFC Bank, and see if there also you have seen any intraday recovery, because
not so much of a move on those two. Some of the PSUs, SBI and some of the other PSUs, and the likes of IndusInd and ICICI, as you mentioned.
IndusInd and ICICI, and even Yes Bank has moved a bit. So that stock as well has moved a bit higher. That's SBI, of course, also IndusInd Bank, ICICI and Yes Bank. So they've taken the bank nifty from 25,300 to 25,445 at this point in time, and making sure that at least we are ending in the green. Mehrbun Irani is also with us. Mehrbun, good afternoon. So are you buying PNB or any other PSU bank right now?
No, I think I would say that the entire PSU bank space right now looks on a weak wicket. I think the last word is yet to be heard, and the actual damage is still not known. I just know one thing, that the taxpayer like you and me will continue to pay for all the losses that the PSU bank space suffers for whatever reason. Will there be an opportunity somewhere? The answer is yes. The point is, we need to accept the fact that the market loves to discount things, and discount things very, very fast, swift. So, but honestly, not having the guts to recommend anything in the PSU bank space, because I just heard that SL also has become an NPS for the latest regulations, and there are at least 4 PSU banks having exposure to SL. So this type of news is going to continue, go on creating dents as far as sentiment goes towards buying into PSU bank space. But what I have always stated, I still continue to say, that somewhere I believe the menace called NPS is being attacked a little bit more vigorously right now, and I still continue to say that the year 2018 could provide lovely trading opportunities for indulging, buying, selling in PSU bank space. Is there an opportunity right now? It's very difficult to state. As of now, they look on a weak wicket, but maybe we could have a good trading opportunity on the buying side over the next 1-2 days, as and when we feel this news, as of now, is discounted.
So if you want to be an optimist, the good news is that this market has not collapsed. The headline indices are holding up. The bank nifty has managed to recover from the lows of the day. Even the mid-cap index has managed to recover for what it's worth. But Anuj, having said that, I think we'll again have to take on board the fact that it's again a day of underperformance. I mean, global markets have been doing much better than us, right?
Oh yes. Today the Asian markets were closed though for lunar holiday, of course, Surabhi. But you know, it brings on board one more thing, that all risks for the market are not just global. You know, that was one thing which was being spoken about. Obviously, there's a bit of a domestic risk as well. You know, it will be better for the market if this whole issue is cleaned out as soon as possible, with whatever damage. If it's limited to PNB, so be it. If it's about other banks as well, so be it. Let's just clean this thing out. And
you stick to that one number, because the market then digests that number if it's 11,000 crores or whatever that number might be.
You don't know, because as PNB also said, it started in 2011.
Yes,
so
we don't know.
You don't know, but of course it will come out. So once all of this is done, I think the market can move on. Good part for the market is that global markets have resumed the rally, and that global volatility, short volatility trade at least is out of the way. The reversal of that trade is at least out of the way. So in that sense, you're not facing a double whammy. You're not facing domestic and global headwinds. At least one part of Qs is supporting you.
Absolutely. Let's actually pull up European markets just to give the context to our viewers as well. There's a nice rally. I mean, for instance, the CAC is up 1.5%. DAX is up about 1%. So looking pretty good, and futures are also holding up on Wall Street, as we have been pointing out. Mehrbun, back to that question. You were saying that 2018 could have some interesting trading ideas going, trading opportunities going. What's on your radar?
Yeah, I would put it this way, that 2018 is certainly not going to be an easy year. And I think I just heard Anuj and you discussing, and Anuj came up and described it very well. Number one is global markets too. The global markets have done very well. India followed suit, a little bit of underperformance. Going ahead, even if global markets do well, India is going to have its own problems. On the positive front, I personally believe corporate performance will improve. I personally believe that GST collections will improve. Negative side, bond yields are quite firm, not a great comfort for the market. But the other interesting problem, and India keeps on having its own problems here and there, and that's what I think Anuj also was trying to say, that besides global domestic, I think we are having many state elections this year. And God forbid, we could have talks of what happens next year in the parliamentary elections. The market is not going to like it. So this year, I believe, is going to be a market for people who are good stock pickers and also are fleet-footed on the other hand. So this is a market in which you cannot afford to build a long-term portfolio. Just keep your eyes closed and say, I'm holding good stocks. Because for all you know, over the next 1 year, this stocks will move up 10-20% on the upside and maybe 10-20% on the downside. So this is a market for stock pickers, number one, and also for people who are fleet-footed. I personally like certain stocks which are value picks. Some of the stocks I've recommended in the past, like maybe a Bama Lorry, a First Source Limited, which is doing reasonably well over the last few days, post excellent numbers announced. In front lines, we like names like Ashok Leyland, Vedanta. So these are the type of stocks we like with clear disclosure. Another stock which I would honestly like to recommend with clear disclosure, I'm personally holding it, and I've advised my clients to buy it with a clear long-term perspective. And I personally believe the stock is possibly one of the most undervalued in the market, is a company called Take Solutions, a Shriram Group company. The company is a globally recognized domain leader in life services or life sciences and supply chain management. 13 crores equity, last year net profit was 130 crores, face value 1 rupee, EPS of 10 rupees. Market cap of the company is just around 2,100 crores. What attracted my attention was the super numbers which the company announced. And mind you, every quarter the orders in hand keeps on growing. I personally believe, looking at the first 9 months this year, 2018-19, the earning of the company should be not less than 12.5. So 10 rupees EPS becomes 12.5 rupees, 25% growth. Life services business, 25% growth, what PE ratio you give? 12.5 rupees should be the EPS. More important, the promoters or the company has announced a preferential allotment of 250 crores, which is about 12% of the total market cap, to the promoters themselves, clearly telling the market, well, our stocks are undervalued. So at 168, 170 with a 12.5 rupees earnings, promoters issuing shares to themselves worth 250 crores, I think is a clear signal that this stock is absolutely undervalued. Life services business, growth of 25%, EPS of 12.5, book value of around 70-75 rupees. I think this stock has room for it to at least give you a 50% return, if not 100% over the next 12 to 18 months.
Okay, the news is still hitting the wires. This is on Fortis now. Supreme Court has lifted the stay on sale of the pledged Fortis Health shares held by Singh brothers. Now this is really interesting because if you see the intraday chart of Fortis, that stock has actually moved to high point of the day. But this actually could mean that now those shares could be sold. But you know, now at least it looks like the deal is now going to happen, Prakash. But
yeah, so I think the stand that the Supreme Court has been taking, and this kind of validates that, is to enable that exit for minority shareholders to get some value out of, you know, the promoters' exit. So in a way, you know, people who have had this leap of faith, and I was against recommending buying a Fortis at that point in time when the crisis broke out. Probably would find us justified that it was worth the wait and they could get rewarded if everything goes off well. Now to what extent and what valuations are of course question marks. But I think Fortis will see a turnaround in sentiment distinctly.
We'll see the intraday of Fortis now. Let's just pull out that stock.
Recovery
from 132 to 145. I think 326B flashed that news. And after that, you just see the intraday chart of that stock now moving to 148. This is not about whether now these shares can be sold or not. The fact is that as Mr. Tulsian also that day was saying that it's a screaming buy. I mean, it's just that maybe now you're one step closer to that deal, that long pending deal. However, you don't know at what price, of course, that deal will happen. Right? But for now, the market wants to believe that the worst could be in the price, and that's why you're seeing this big move right now on Fortis stock, up about 4.5% at 149. So that's Fortis. We'll track that news for you. We'll get Ashmit as well to give us more details. For now, let's just wrap up the day. you know, on balance, would have still won the day because the Sensex is going home with about 0.5% gain. Same is the case with Nifty, the Bank Nifty as well, almost 0.5% gain. But the mid-cap index lost today, about 1% lower is what we had on the mid-cap index. But today, you could have easily had a last hour fall. That didn't happen on the Bank Nifty on the weekly options expiry day. In terms of individual stocks, ICICI clearly batted for the bulls today through the day and 3% higher on that stock. Infosys up 1.5%. SBI, HDFC and Lever were the other stocks that did well. BP and HPS as well. Of course, BP was in fact the top Nifty gainers, BBCL that is. On the way down, well, PNB is no longer an index stock, so we can't talk about that from the index, but Larsen & Toubro, Bharti Airtel, Aurobindo, Hero Moto, India Bulls Housing, these were some of the losers in trade today. But it was about broader market as well today.
Absolutely, and I will start with PNB. Anuj, final count on that stock is still down 13%. I mean, wave after wave of selling continuing. Overall, taking a look at other, PSU bank names. So, for instance, IDBI Bank about 3% lower on the downside. A lot of these other banks were also sort of, feeling the heat, though they recovered from the lows. If you talk about some of the other names, Allahabad Bank or something like. A couple of the other names, IDBI Bank, Allahabad Bank, again, most of them ending on the downside. Interesting day for a couple of the NBFCs as well. So the likes of Edelweiss, for instance, managed some recovery from the lows of the day. And final count is just about 1% on the lower side on an Edelweiss. Some selling on a couple of names, Max India, not Max Financial Services, but Max India has had a very big negative cut on it. Muthoot Capital, again, not Muthoot Finance, but Muthoot Capital. Some interesting selling on a couple of these group stocks. Jet Airways, a very negative result reaction. REC is down about 7% today. And you definitely didn't want to be holding any jewelry stocks. So Gitanjali obviously is 20% down. Some of the others like PC Jeweler losing about 5% as well in trade. Beyond that, what was weak? Jain Irrigation about 4% on the lower side. We talk about other major losers, then something like Jindal Stainless stands out. Titagarh Wagons about 6% lower. And some of the indebted plays, so GMR, GVK, Bhushan, most of these stocks, Hotel Leela, wherever there's either an existing sort of a, debt restructuring underway, some of these NCLT cases, most of these stocks were a no-go territory. Having said that, let me just spot a couple of the winners as well. So great numbers from Nestle, and the market liked it all the way through despite the volatility. 4% up on that stock, no problems there. Vakrangi, by the way, 5% up circuit day today on that one. Interesting recovery on Delta Corp, strong buying towards the dying moments of trade, 4% up on that one. Bombay dying about 7% higher. And of course, a stock that we were just discussing, Fortis Healthcare, because of the news that came through just as the market was closing out. Let's pull it up. So there we go. Final count is 1% up move and almost a 4-5% reaction from the lows of the session because of the stay being lifted on the sale of shares. So that's the action.
Yes, 143.40 is because now that's the adjusted closing. The last traded rate was 147.20 on Fortis, which is what the futures rate will now show you. If you see that adjustment takes place a bit later than compared to the cash adjustment. But decent day for the markets then. Let's take some final thoughts then on trade today. Ashwani, so tomorrow morning there's a good chance that we once again wake up to decent global cues. What would be a good trade tomorrow then?
Yeah, again, chances are we gap up a bit and then we start to underperform like we have done today. Now the problem is that general news channels have also gotten to the PNB case, and now they are flashing that another bank accepts lending money to Modi. Which is that other bank? Axis Bank. So if this sort of rumor mongering starts, then God help Bank Nifty and the market. This has to stop. You need calm waters for the markets to go up. Otherwise, it's going to be volatile rides. 100 points up, 70 down, and that's what you got to deal with. The way to trade it is that you wait for the boundaries. Like today's boundary was 10,600, 620. On the downside, we held on yesterday's low on Bank Nifty. So in the morning, that was the boundary. So unless you get to the boundaries, there's no point trying to do things in the middle of the range.
Okay, I take your point, Ashwani. I think very, very important to stick with the facts in this story. Otherwise, it can go all over the place. For instance, when the Axis Bank name, the reason it's come up is it is one of the banks that opened up one of those LOUs or the letters of understanding. So, yes, there is exposure, but that's a known fact. In fact, PNB went on record to say that depending on which way these investigations go, if the investigations place the onus on PNB, then PNB will bear the liability. It will not be borne by other banks. So, we really need to be very careful with the facts over here. All right. Thanks for that take. Prakash, any quick final thoughts? I mean, how would you approach tomorrow, given this has been such a rocky week and tomorrow is Friday?
I think the market will probably start seeking a mind of its own and not just look at global cues. Today, the gap up opening was thanks to the exuberance all around, and then till of course the PNB thing kind of took its toll. But I would believe a large part of the significant part of the results season is also over. So it's now time to rework on expectations based on the earnings that have come through. So the market will probably have a very dull few days tomorrow and the week after. I don't see anything as rocky as what we've seen in the last 2 days. So and we were just hoping that thankfully this was a truncated week. Otherwise, you could imagine the damage we would have been self-inflicted on our markets.
Okay. All right, gentlemen. Thanks very much for joining in. You have a good evening. And of course, we will take your market opinion again soon. Let's just go back to that story that broke on your screens a while back with respect to Fortis Healthcare. Ashmit is joining in with the latest court developments. Ashmit, fill us in.
Well, the apex court, in what appears to be a shift in its earlier position, making it very clear now, clarifying on its earlier orders, that as of now, it is lifting the status quo order, it is lifting the stay order with respect to Fortis Healthcare shares that were encumbered prior to the date of the interim order, which is August 11th. That, in simple words, effectively is the Supreme Court saying is that shares that had been pledged by the promoters, by the Singh brothers, before various lenders, Axis Bank and Yes Bank were the ones that saw the biggest number of shares pledged. These banks, now importantly, will be at liberty to transact in, to sell these shares. That's the major takeaway as far as this particular order is concerned. Keep in mind that in August of last year, the apex court had given very explicit directions that no asset of Singh brothers, encumbered or unencumbered, shall be transacted in, shall be sold in any shape or form. And that was a blanket stay order that the apex court had granted. What it has now done is that it has partially vacated that stay in allowing these lenders to go ahead and sell these shares. Now, keep in mind that while the pledged shares are being allowed, at this stage, it's important to keep in mind the figures involved. That as far as Singh brothers are concerned, their total shareholding in Fortis Healthcare via Fortis Healthcare Holdings is about 34%. And as per the latest data available on the NSE website, seems to suggest that 98% of that is already pledged with these lenders. So what actions these lenders take from here on, whether or not they choose to sell, will decide the course going forward as far as Fortis and its fundraising plans are concerned. Back to you.
Okay, Ashmit, thanks a lot for that.
Closing bell money control question of the day was on the big story of the last 24 hours, the PNB fraud. We asked you whether you see more such frauds coming to light at other PSU banks as well. Now, 91% of the respondents said yes, 9% said no. Here are a couple of responses. The first one says, yes, absolutely. What is the reason for NPAs? It's because most of PSU bank managers, especially in the credit department, sanction loans on promise of kickbacks and commissions from the borrowers. They don't do full verification on promise of kickbacks. We want to reiterate, this is not, of course, our view. These are just responses that we are picking up from social media. There is another view that's coming in, another respondent saying that previous government has not taken any steps to protect the economy. We are suffering due to poor administrative policies. There's one more response. This one says that there is no doubt of that happening. The respondent says all the skeletons in the locker should come out, and it's only a matter of time before we see that happening. Scathing responses really coming in on this big story. Well, sticking with the latest, CNBC TV18 learns that 6 banks are found to have discounted bills against PNB issued LOUs to Nirav Modi and Gitanjali Gems. Ritu is joining in with all the details. Now, Ritu, I guess that's the next piece of the puzzle, right? Which are the other banks involved and who will bear the liability? We heard in the press conference the PNB management clarifying that if the investigation says the onus is on them, then they'll foot the bill.
Absolutely. In fact, as of now, the onus is solely on Punjab National Bank to repay all of these dues. To give, some sort of a context, the scam that we're talking about, or the fraud amount, is 11,300 odd crore rupees, as disclosed by Punjab National Bank officials. Now, some banks say it could be slightly larger, to the tune of 13,000-14,000 crore rupees. But for a fact, what we know right now is that the fraud is 11,300 crore rupees. Now, what really happened is fraudulently letters of undertaking were issued at Punjab National Bank, addressed to various foreign offices of Indian banks, and there were 6 banks involved that actually gave credit to Nirav Modi and Gitanjali Gem companies on the basis of this LOU that was issued. These 6 banks include State Bank of India, Canara Bank, Bank of India. There's also Axis Bank, Allahabad. All of these banks, Union Bank of India, have all lent credit against the LOUs that were issued. Now, just to clarify, they do not have exposures to Nirav Modi or to Gitanjali Gems, or have committed any fraud at this point, as is being speculated. They merely lent against the LOU that was issued by PNB. So their exposure, technically speaking, is to Punjab National Bank, not to the 2 companies involved in this particular case. So naturally, all of the dues will have to be repaid by Punjab National Bank. The pressure is mounting on them. But PNB, on its account, is saying that there's some blame also to be laid on other banks for not disclosing sufficient information to Punjab National Bank. Of course, the management has said very clearly that it will honor all its dues and do as directed by the Reserve Bank of India.
आपको मालूम है कि जो बैंक इस समय अपनी पूरी क्षमता से गलत काम करने वाले लोगों को पे एक्शन लेने के लिए काम कर रहा है। जैसे ही हमें इस घटना का पता चला, हमने उसकी जांच करी, we have investigated it, and even on the availability of the first available such incidents where we could verify these facts, we have gone to the law enforcement agencies to book the culprits and take strong legal action. We are already in discussion with all the lenders. It will be decided based on the investigation. If the entire onus is ours, we will hold the responsibility. We are not going back from it. But nobody else can be a beneficiary of it also.
Okay, let's now move over to the other story of the day, and this is one that's coming in from the education space. ZLearn has acquired 44.53% stake in MT Educare via a preferential issue. Earlier today, we caught up with Chaya Shastri, director at MT Educare, to understand how, of course, the open offer will play out and what the strategic rationale is of this deal. Take a look.
ZLearn will be having management control. They will, of course, very much be the co-promoter. And 200 crores is the plan that we have actually estimated is we have some existing debt. So we require some funds to make sure our technology initiatives take off the way we have planned. It should add to at least around 15 to 20%, but I think we should wait and watch.